Hey everyone, Fox here from Fox & Kit Woodworks Fox Den Videos, and I am bringing you the initial setup and review of the F2 Laser Engraver from xTool. Now, this is my second or third kind of review I've done that's more in this big formal format. I did start shooting it before, and I had some issues with our audio and also video, so I'm going to be using that as some of that side footage and probably talking over it or putting it up in the screen while I do this, because I actually have the machine mostly put together and I've done some tests already with it, but I want to be able to go with you with you guys the actual setup process. So first of all, when you get it out of the box, we already went over its contents. You're going to have your instructions, you're going to have a materials pack, the base plate, the little L bracket for setting things up in, this riser plate, which is going to be used when you're doing cutting. You actually get a screwdriver, which in the instructions is going to tell you one thing, but it's another. A power cord and a tube for your extraction system, and then also a USB cable. So first thing out of the box, what you're going to want to do is start taking all the stickers off of this. I've removed all the stickers off mine, and then the next thing you're going to do is take this lens cover off, and it just pops off. I would hold on to this just in case you do go to craft fairs and things like that. You're going to want to be able to use this to cover the lens when you're transferring back and forth, or even maybe in the shop. Like I get a lot of dust, I'll probably be throwing this on here when I'm not using it. Next, now that you've got that set up, we're going to go over the machine and kind of go over what are the important parts to it. So on this machine, it's very simple. There is a USB little stick here that you're going to want to make sure is in the machine. It comes like this. If it's not, make sure it's put in. This is actually what's going to let it be able to actually engrave when it's time to engrave. On the back side here, you have different ports, and those are for either the foot pedal or RA2 or RA3 to be able to plug into, or the sliding base table. On the side here, what you'll notice is there's actually two things here. There's a connection port and one with a PC. When you do your initial setup, you're going to want to set that down, that USB cord and plug it into there and plug it into your computer, and make sure you've already downloaded xTool Studio so that way you can update the firmware on this machine. Now, once you have that all set up and done, you're going to want to put in the standard riser base plate, which is this one right here, into the machine. We're going to come around to the back side. We're going to take that tube for the exhaust. We're going to put it on the back. And then we're going to plug in the power. And the power is right next to the power switch. That's it. That is how simple it was to set this machine up to get it to turn on and hook up to your xTool Studio. Now, once you're in xTool Studio and it does recognize it, there are some other steps that you're going to have to do. But let's go ahead and turn the machine on and give you a nice look at that xTool logo and what it looks like all lit up. Now that we have the machine set up, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the other footage I did. And what you're going to end up doing is plugging this into a laptop. Make sure xTool Studio, like I said, is all the way downloaded and fully upgraded. And you're going to plug this in. In the upper right-hand corner, there's going to be a little icon that looks like a hex. And you're going to click on that, and there's going to be an Add Machine button. Don't click F2 on below it. That's actually to set the parameters for whatever project you're working on, to be able to say, hey, it's going to be for this machine down the road. So just click the Add Device button. Also, you're going to add it from an actual program. At least that's how I did it, and it was the easiest, or a workpiece. So you're going to open up a new page, like you're going to do a new design or element, and that's where you're going to click it up at. Once you click that button, it's going to actually go ahead and start looking for this via the USB, and once it finds it, it's going to scan it and tell you that there's going to be a firmware update. When the firmware update comes up and it's completed, and mind you, the machine will shut off a few times and turn back on. Don't turn off the machine during this process, otherwise it'll mess up the firmware and you'll have to do a whole other process to erase the old firmware and put the new one on. You're going to go ahead and complete that. Once it's completed and it's done, it'll actually load up a tutorial on how to, one, calibrate the laser and then do your first piece. Now, for calibration of the laser, it has an autofocus. So you're going to take one of these stock cards. And in the instructions, it shows it as like a little 3" by 3" stock card, but it's actually bigger. And you're just going to place it on the machine, hit the auto zoom button and auto calibration button, and it's going to basically measure the distance and then make 2 marks on it. Those 2 marks are going to be your laser aiming points for your IR and your blue laser, your blue diode. The next screen it's going to go to, it's going to show you where the lasers are aimed at with a reticle on that picture. So do not move anything. Do not touch anything. Leave the piece of paper in there. I know you're going to want to mess with it. Don't. Just leave it in there with it closed. Once that's done, you can go in and fine-tune those crosshairs or let it auto-calibrate it to it, which is even mine. It was pretty darn accurate with auto-calibration. I just moved them over just ever so slightly to where I figured it was dead middle. And that's going to calibrate the diodes for its accuracy. Now, if you can see here, when I lift this up, there is a blue laser right over here. And as you can see, there is a blue laser dot right here. If I slide the case down, you'll notice it turns to red. That is your red aiming laser. That is how you're going to actually set up pieces in there to find the autofocus point, and also like set your piece so you can actually set the perimeters. And what the next step is going to be is making sure that your red aiming laser is on top of that blue diode laser. And the way to best do this is you're going to lift this up, and you'll be able to see if the blue and red laser are overlapping, meaning they're on top of each other. I did find out if you threw one of these cards on it, it did help with that process. You could see it a little clearer. And what you have to do is if it's off, you need to calibrate that red laser. Now, in the instruction manual, it'll say to use the 2.5 millimeter screw head. Now, what I found out is mine is actually a Phillips, not a 2.5. And on the underside of this machine, down under here, are 2 screws. The one closest to the laser diode, you're going to take that Phillips, you're going to very carefully go under there and loosen it up. And then on the right side of the aiming laser, there is an actual opening. And all you're going to do is stick that screwdriver into that opening and gently pry it back and forth, left and right, until your dots are overlapping. Once your dots are overlapping, you're going to tighten that screw back down, but be mindful. As you tighten it down, because it's a set stop, it's going to move the laser slightly. On mine, it moved it up about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. So what I did is I set my laser slightly below the blue dot and tightened it, and then adjusted it, and then tightened it a little more and adjusted it until I got it to where a point was, it wasn't over tightened. It was just kind of finger tight and overlapping it, and I was good to go. Once I did that, I was all set. Okay, so now you have auto-calibrated your laser, you have confirmed it in xTool Studio. The next thing it's going to do is bring you to a tutorial. And in that tutorial, it's going to have you pull out one of these aluminum cards. You're going to place it in here as close to center as possible, and I have this bracket in the way right now. And it's going to auto-calibrate to the distance to it, and then it's going to take a picture of it. Again, do not move the card. Do not make the mistake I made. I put it in there. I saw that it was not perfectly centered, had everything already dialed. I adjusted the card to the laser. I did that, and once I did that, it actually ended up throwing off the engraving itself. Because what it's doing is taking a picture of the card for you to place the image on it so it's centered or where you want it and not touch it, and then go from there. Once that's done and you have centered the image on it best you want, you're going to close this down, you're going to hit the start button, and it's going to print it out. It does it in about 5, maybe 7 seconds. It was very fast. And you will have your first engraving done. Now, from there, there's a lot of other things that you can do. It's going to bring you up to another tutorial page where you can go and see the other images or items that people have created to test with an F2, but be mindful. In there, some people have listed it as an F2. 5-watt IR, 15-watt diode, but they actually used an F2 Ultra. I tried this on one of the pieces of stainless steel they sent, which I don't have with me, one of the dog tags, and it was supposed to color engrave, and I got 0 color engraving. When I went back and looked at the file, someone had commented this was for the F2 Ultra, not for the F2 regular, standalone. So, now that we've done that, let's go ahead and test out some materials. Okay, and here we are on the xTool Studio. I've already loaded up a new, or I should say the tutorial version right here. It's going to bring you this after you've calibrated everything, and it's going to show you how it works, but it's pretty simple. What we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and click the auto measure, and that's going to auto measure to the card using the laser or whatever it uses for that calibration, and then it's going to take a picture of the background. And as we can see here, I've actually inserted a new green card. We'll see how this engraves. I haven't checked any settings. And then what we're doing is setting it on the center of it. Now, the one thing it doesn't do is figure out the center of the actual card. It just shows you the center of the machine. So if you notice here, there's the center there. There's a center line there. We can tell that it's a little off to the right. So we're just going to eyeball it best we can. But another cool feature that you have from this, when it's all said and done, is the fact that we can actually do a framing, and it'll put up a blue laser framing it out. What we did is the basic tutorial setup. So it actually selected the mode of processing on the base plate and the material setting, setting it to the black metal. And then from there, it does the auto calibration for everything else. It's set to engrave already. It's using infrared light, 90% power, 2500 speed, and lines per centimeters 200 bidirectional engraving. So at this point, what we're going to do is go ahead and hit framing. And now if we come over to the machine, you can see the frame that it's creating. And then we can actually come in here and adjust it by hand to get it set where we think it's best looking on it. And that's looking kind of good for us for this test run. We're going to go ahead and close the case. Come back over to this side here and hit process. Start. It's going to send the file over. All we're going to do is touch this side button right here, and we're going to watch it go. And there you have it, done live. Very clean. So that is aluminum. Let's go ahead and try something else. Okay, and we're going to test the F2's ability, but also xTool's to create something for us. So what we've actually done here is use their AI Make to generate a scene for us. It says it's a fox wearing a Merry Christmas hat, as you can see in the picture. And we actually just typed in, create a Christmas scene with a cute fox wearing a snow hat that says Merry Christmas. It created this image. I think it's actually kind of cute. And what we're going to go ahead and do is do some editing for it. And we're going to go to the edit function here. And if you go over here, it actually says adjustments. And on the top left, you can go to auto adjust. And what this is going to do is auto adjust it to the material you're using, such as stone. And what it'll do is invert the image so that the colors will change differently on the slate. There is our auto adjustment. And it is saying that we're going to be running the blue dot laser at 100% or 40% power and 100% dot duration with 500 DPI. So there's a lot of things in here that I'm not familiar with the S1, so this is all going to be stuff I'm going to have to learn about. But let's go ahead and process it and see what happens. Now this image says it's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take about 9.5 minutes. Okay, that took about 9.5 minutes. It actually says the finish time was 9 minutes and 26 seconds. Let's go ahead and see how this looks. Now, I have not done anything with this yet on Slate. This is my initial setup with just the automatic features or settings from the xTool Studio. Obviously, I think this will look a lot better if you were to lacquer the Slate beforehand. It just gives it a little bit more of a pop. But let's just check and see how this AI image turned out. And actually, not too bad. It could be a little clearer. I think if we did that lacquer, it would turn out really good. But you have a lot of detail in there. That DPI setting's really interesting. I've never used that before on the S1. You just have the lines per centimeter. But that actually turned out pretty good. I think if we were to hit it with the lacquer beforehand, it would really pop and shine this off really well. Everybody, we are back. I didn't quite get to finish that video last night. Got some things in the way. I got to move out. But like I said, if you lacquered that Slate and then maybe change some settings, which is what I did, you do get a really good image out of it. See, hopefully that can pick it up. I'll try to take a still and put it in here. And really what I found out with this, that DPI setting is going to be how many dots per inch it is. And the higher that number, basically, the more dots are in that area. And if they're starting to overlap each other, you're going to get a little bit more burn in certain areas. Also, there's a dwell setting, which is basically how long it sits there. And what I found out on this guy here is if I did it at a 500 DPI, but I turned my dwell setting down from 100, which they typically say 100 to 200 is good for most materials at 500 DPI, 100 to 200 dwell setting. I actually turned it down to 90. And then I kind of played between 90 and 95 on a few of them and really got some good pictures out of it. So let's see here. We've done Slate. We've done metal. Let's do a little piece of wood and see what we can get. Okay, so what we've gone ahead and done is we have put in, make sure that's out of the way. Doesn't matter if I move this a little bit because it's already set the autofocus. I'm just trying to make sure we're using more of this. I've actually set a piece of basswood in here, and what we're going to do is see what the auto settings turn out to be like. I have no idea how to do this on the wood engraving, so we're just going to see what it does. What I did is I kept what it said for basswood for this engraving. It's a JPEG image, and then the other three I've actually just adjusted slightly. One, I turned the dwell time down, and then the other actually turned the dwell time and the DPI up to see what we get. So let's go ahead and see how this turns out. And for these 4 images, they're each about 1.5 inches wide. It takes about 7 minutes, 57 seconds. So let me go ahead and get you a little time lapse. Okay, let's go ahead and see how it turned out. This was, like I said, no real editing on my behalf, and everything's pretty dark. One of the things I think I've noticed with basswood is if you actually give it a nice brush afterwards, knock some of that soot off, or even a light sand. So actually I got some 220 sandpaper here. I'm just gonna give it a light brush and a light sand and see how this looks. And this picture is not the best. This was actually a picture of our old dog. This is what it looks like just after light brushing. Pretty dark, and that's just really the settings. But let's just hit it with a little sandpaper and see what we can bring up. And that helped. It took away a little bit of the detail. The top ones are definitely turning out better. It's kind of hard to do a grayscaled black image dog, but that's actually not too bad for not messing with any settings. That's just the standard settings. So I have one more thing to show you guys while you're here. I did run some tests last night on stainless and this galvanized, I don't know if that's the right word, sheet metal. This isn't the stainless 304 or 316 that you can get the colors for, but for when you're trying to do engraving on metal, it actually does a pretty good job. You get a lot of grays, some blacks, some whites. So I would always highly suggest running, parameter settings. And then here are like the aluminum business cards or steel business cards, the thin sheet. What I found out is you get some kind of tans and whites, some grays, and then if you really bumped up the DPI and the dwell settings, you could even get almost some blacks in there. So I think that's going to summarize our little review on materials. Okay, so that is the setup and initial review of the F2 standalone, or I should say F2 with the AP2 running on it. I did do that, and I have a video for that coming out next. So far, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of, not that I hadn't lost any of my, interest in laser engraving and finding new products with the 40 watt, but, I was kind of in a point where I'm doing glassware, woodworking stuff, wood engraving. I was starting to kind of figure it out, and it's like, hey, this is great. I can just pop things in and go. This is really opening up a whole new level of learning for me and kind of interest because of the different settings, the IR being a more powerful IR. I have a 2 watt over here. I don't really use that often, but this 5 watt and how quickly it runs, especially on smaller items like that I typically would run on this one, I think this is going to be a huge game changer for that. Also, doing little pieces for people when they only want like 2 or 4 coasters. I can pop them in here while the big guy goes. And honestly, the small form factor, if you're really just starting out and wanting to do something kind of a hobbyist working on smaller items, this is going to be great for you. I think that this F2 is going to be perfect for a few different people. One, someone getting into laser engraving and doing small little hobbies. I think it's going to be great to be used with the fact that you have a small platform. You can get a sliding base for it. You can still cut with it. This centerpiece pops out. You can put it on top of things and engrave it. And also, if you start doing craft fairs, it's going to be very helpful. And that's where it leads into me, the business owners or the small-time crafters that go to craft fairs. You can bring this out with your, out to your craft fair, put it on your table, as long as you got some type of power source, whether it's a power bank, words are hard, or a generator, or you have power hookup for it, you can custom engrave stuff right on site for the people to do. Once you get all the settings figured out, you could have your plethora of different materials or your small amount, or maybe you just go, hey, look, I'm here to customize whatever you have in your pocket. You've tested plastics with the IR for keychains or, key fobs, maybe headphones, things like that. People come over, you pop it in, you do your little image. 5-10 minutes later, they come back, make yourself a quick $10-15 off of it, right? When it comes to like bigger business owners, probably not going to be the machine of choice, unless you're going around, putting it up on something to do like a serial number engrave on bigger items. You're probably going to want to be starting to look into more like the F2 Ultra, the MOPA fiber laser, or maybe the F2 UV, which is something I'm looking at maybe down the road if the glassware keeps going as it's going. Or more importantly, like the P3 with the CO2 that has a bigger bed, more industrial sized, designed for that growing, home business or small shop business that needs a lot of cutting power, a lot of work surface, things like that. But honestly, I'm very impressed with it. I was very pleased with the different types of material it does. I know the wood didn't turn out as good on this one, but if we were doing, I think, just a straight name engrave or, basically SVG file, it would do just perfectly fine. It's just really figuring out the settings that are going to work with your piece of wood and also picking out the right piece of wood so it engraves well. I did engrave this with the grain. You want to engrave across the grain. I think that would have helped too. But so I really love this machine. Again, thank you xTool for choosing me to win the My xTool Stories giveaway. I cannot wait to keep putting it into the shop more and work-wise, getting it more projects that I can do just for this and put out on my page or word of mouth to sell, but more importantly, start taking it out to the crafts fairs, the farmers markets, doing engraving right there in front of people so that people can see what it's like. So again, definitely a winner. Definitely great for, entry level hobbyists, crafters, crafts fairs, farmers market people. If they're getting that kind of stuff, doing custom engraving, perfect for that. Very simple to use. I've actually had Kit out here a couple times practicing with it. So the big safety feature I like on this is the fact that, again, you close it, the laser's contained. You should still probably wear glasses around it, but you don't really have to most of the time. The side note to that is you can turn that function off when you're engraving things that are bigger. So just remember to have a pair of glasses by when you're doing that. So anyways, that is the review and initial setup of the F2. Please go check out my next video, which is going to be on the AP2 and much shorter than this one. And Like always, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification button, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe.